Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a rogue HOA gate blocks a rancher's only road, a showdown ignites. Forged documents, a weaponized bull named Brewster, and a farmer's relentless grit explode into a battle for land, legacy, and justice. Forget quiet country life. This is war on the range. I woke up that morning to the sound of my phone going off like someone was trying to reach me from a burning house. I fumbled around, knocked over my old thermos, and grabbed the phone off the nightstand. It was Dale, my regular feed delivery guy. "Zach, you got some kind of gate at your driveway now," he barked. "Steel thing, keypad, cameras, says it's private HOA access. Can't even turn the damn truck around." I sat up, squinting out the window toward the pasture. "Gate? Nobody said a damn thing about a gate." I pulled on yesterday's jeans, grabbed a flannel shirt from the back of a chair, and stepped into my boots. By the time I made it down the gravel path to the end of the drive, Dale had parked his truck half on the shoulder, half in the ditch. And there it was. A shiny black metal gate with a keypad mounted on a concrete post, a camera blinking above it like it was watching a bank vault. On it, a crisp, reflective sign, "Private HOA Access. Entry restricted to approved residents." The hell it was. "This new?" Dale asked, jerking a thumb at the thing like maybe I'd forgotten to tell him about it. I stepped closer. No call box, no buzzer, no sign of any warning this was coming. Just cold steel and a code pad I didn't have the numbers to. "That road's public," I muttered, mostly to myself, though I knew Dale heard it. "Public or not, I can't make the delivery like this," he said. "Gonna have to mark it delayed. My boss'll have my ass." I told him to hold tight, jogged back up to the house, fired up the ATV, and drove around through the back pasture, cutting through a break in the fence I hadn't used in years. The path was rough and tight, and by the time I got the gate open from the inside, figuring out it was on a pressure sensor from the back, one of my fence panels was busted, and a section of barbed wire was dangling like spaghetti. I managed to get Dale in, but I was already furious. I knew exactly who to call. I dialed the HOA office of Suncrest Meadows, the pristine suburb next door that sprouted up over the last decade like a glass tumor. The receptionist connected me to Karen Malone, the president of their little fiefdom. I'd only spoken to her once before when she tried to convince me to let community guests park on my pasture during their 4th of July fireworks. "Ah, yes, Mr. Brody," she said like she was expecting me. "That gate is part of our new security expansion. The neighborhood board approved it last month." "Karen," I said slowly, "you put a goddamn steel gate on a municipal road. That's my only access to my ranch. You think you can just fence off a farmer and call it security? You have other ways in, I'm sure. And the road may be municipal, but we filed a request with the county for limited access designation under our community development rights." "You filed a request," I repeated. "You didn't get it approved." There was a pause. "Well, these things take time. Meanwhile, we have every right to ensure the safety of our residents. I'm afraid you'll need to make alternate arrangements." Then she hung up on me. By noon, the mail truck turned around at the gate. By 3, a neighbor who was supposed to pick up a calf couldn't get through. That evening, the UPS guy left a note saying they couldn't deliver to restricted HOA zones. My dogs barked at the damn gate for 20 minutes straight. The next morning, I called the sheriff. Deputy Mendez drove out in the afternoon, stood next to me, and looked the gate up and down. "Looks bad," he said, "but technically, this could be a gray area. I'll need to talk to zoning and check the right-of-way maps." I looked at him like he'd grown 2 heads. "It's not a gray area. That road's older than Suncrest Meadows, and I've been using it since I was a kid. My dad got feed trucks down that road when this place was nothing but cactus and coyotes." "I hear you, Zach," he said, holding up a hand. "But if the HOA's got papers filed, even if they're premature, we can't just pull it out without review. You'd be best off getting some paperwork together yourself. Get ahead of it." I nodded, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. That night, sitting on my porch with a cup of burnt coffee and a dog at my feet, I stared at the blinking red light of the gate camera like it was flipping me off. They wanted a fight? Fine. They'd damn well get one. By the next morning, my boots were already on before the sun came up. I couldn't sleep. That gate sat in my mind like a splinter under the nail, sharp, petty, and getting worse by the hour. If Karen thought I was just some rancher who'd roll over and say thank you for being locked out of my own land, she picked the wrong damn farmer. I started digging. In the back office of my house, a room that still smelled faintly of old saddle leather and my dad's cigar smoke, I opened up the battered green filing cabinet he'd left behind. Most folks would have just called a lawyer, but I didn't need one to tell me what I already knew. That road didn't belong to the HOA, and it sure as hell wasn't theirs to block. After an hour of sorting through dusty manila folders labeled in my dad's chicken scratch handwriting, I found what I was looking for. A servitude agreement dated 1972, signed by the county clerk and witnessed by two ranchers I remembered from church potlucks as a kid. The document gave our land perpetual access rights to the municipal road that now sat behind a shiny HOA prison gate. I scanned it, made a few copies, and headed to the county records office with a thumb drive, a travel mug full of diesel-grade coffee, and a mood like a pissed-off bobcat. The clerk there, Marlene, was used to seeing me once a year to file cattle tag records or argue about pasture tax brackets. This time, I handed her a folder. "Marlene," I said, "I think someone tried to sell the sidewalk out from under my boots." She raised an eyebrow and started flipping through the papers. 10 minutes later, she called someone from zoning and pulled up the digital parcel maps. There it was, plain as the sunrise. The road in question was owned by the county, unincorporated, and never rezoned or ceded to any HOA. And then we found something real interesting, a permit application filed by Suncrest Meadows just 2 months ago, requesting restricted access installation for security purposes. But the real kicker? Attached to the application was a page titled Adjacent Landowner Approval with a list of names and signatures. Mine was on it, except I never signed a damn thing. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine if you asked a drunk teenager to forge it while being chased by a bee. No doubt in my mind, someone forged my name. Marlene whistled. That's fraud if I've ever seen it. You need to get this to the county attorney. I left with a folder full of gold. On the way back, I called a buddy of mine. Calvin runs a small-town law office and helps out when someone sues over a cow that trampled a flower bed. He said to send him everything and start a formal complaint with the municipal office. Said he'd handle it pro bono until things got real. I spent the next few hours drafting a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA, citing the servitude agreement, municipal right-of-way laws, and about 3 different state codes I didn't know last week, but could now quote like scripture. I had it notarized and delivered by a courier that afternoon with a friendly note stapled to the front. You have 48 hours to remove the gate, or I remove it with my tractor. No response. Instead, they doubled down. By sundown the next day, there was a second camera mounted on the gate, and an actual security guard in a reflective vest standing next to it, some guy who looked like he took the job after being rejected from mall cop duty. I rode up to the gate in my truck, leaned out the window and asked, "You guarding the road from tumbleweeds, or are you just lost?" He didn't respond, just stood there, arms crossed, sunglasses on like he was protecting Fort Knox. I turned around, drove the long way through the pasture again, bounced over more rocks than I had suspension, and ended the day with a busted tie rod and a cracked rear fender on my feed wagon. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the stars, and for the first time in a long while, felt something boil up in me I hadn't felt since the bank tried to foreclose on my dad's land after his stroke. They thought they could box me in, that I'd cave and move my operation or lay down like some house cat that lost its porch. But they hadn't counted on the fact that I knew this land better than they knew their own bylaws. And unlike their lawyers, I didn't have to read about the dirt in a file. I was raised in it. The thing about cutting across your own pasture every day is that eventually the pasture cuts back. I'd already ripped out a section of my old boundary fence to make a temporary route for deliveries, but even calling it temporary felt generous. It was a bumpy, uneven mess carved by desperation, not design. Every trip risked snapped axles, stuck tires, or spooked livestock. That week, it got worse. On Monday, one of the water delivery trucks bottomed out in a rut and bent an axle. Tuesday, the feed wagon clipped a corner post and took out 20 feet of barbed wire. And Wednesday damn near broke me. I found one of my calves tangled in the wire where the makeshift road met the far paddock. He must have wandered too close during the night, got his leg twisted trying to back out, and had been laying there for God knows how long, breathing hard and blinking slow. He was barely a month old. I cut him loose, carried him to the barn in the back of my truck, and called the vet. While I waited, I just sat there next to him in the straw, my hands still sticky with blood and mud. I wasn't mad in that moment. I was something colder. The vet patched him up, gave him fluids, and told me flat out, "Zach, if access stays like this, you'll lose more than fences. You'll lose animals." I nodded, jaw clenched. I already lost patience. I called the USDA regional office and filed a report about limited access endangering livestock. An agent named Weller came out 2 days later. Middle-aged, looked like he'd been wearing the same brown windbreaker since the Bush administration, but he listened, took notes, walked the damaged fence line with me, and asked good questions. "This isn't just inconvenience," he said. "This is operational sabotage. I'll file it up the chain." While he was there, the UPS guy rolled up to the gate, took one look, cursed, and drove off. Weller raised an eyebrow. I didn't say a word. The gate spoke loud enough. That evening, I decided to take matters further. I installed a small trail cam just inside the fence line facing the gate. Nothing illegal, just enough to get footage of what I figured was happening when I wasn't around. 2 days later, the SD card gave me everything I needed. Footage of the HOA security guard actively turning away one of my ranch hand neighbors, a good man named Leroy, who just wanted to come by and pick up his share of feed. The guard even told him, word for word, "This road is no longer available for farm traffic." I sent the footage to my lawyer and attached it to an amended complaint we filed with the county that night. I also emailed it directly to the HOA with a short subject line, "Still think this is about security?" Next morning, I got a letter hand-delivered, certified, from the HOA legal team. Cease and desist. Apparently, they were accusing me of surveillance of HOA personnel without consent and intrusion into private security operations. I laughed so hard I almost spilled coffee on the envelope. Later that day, Karen herself called me. "Mr. Brody," she said, crisp as ever, "you are not authorized to place cameras facing HOA property. This constitutes a privacy violation." "Karen," I said, "your guard is standing on a public right-of-way blocking my livestock trucks. If he wanted privacy, maybe he shouldn't have taken a job in broad daylight acting like a toll booth." There was a pause. Then, "We're exploring legal options." I didn't respond. I let the silence hang until she hung up. That night, the local paper ran a piece titled "Steelgate Causes Stir Between Ranch and HOA." It was buried on page 3 next to a gardening column and an ad for discounted hearing aids, but it was a start. The journalist, a young woman named Ellie, called me afterward and asked if she could come out for a photo. I told her she could take a picture of the gate, but if she wanted a real story, she should try to interview the calf I almost buried. By week's end, I'd spent more on vet bills, fuel, and replacement fencing than I cared to calculate. The pasture looked like it had been hit by a tank. My livestock was skittish. My help was frustrated. My patience was wearing thinner than a barbed wire under tension. This wasn't a property dispute anymore. It wasn't about neighborhood aesthetics or security plans or any other polished phrase Karen liked to toss around. It was about control. They wanted to make the road theirs by pretending mine didn't exist. So fine. If they were going to turn my pasture into a battlefield, I was damn well going to fight like it was a war. Some mornings start with coffee. Others start with chaos. That one started with both, just not in the order I preferred. It was about 6:30, and I was trying to patch together the busted corner of the pasture fence for the third time in a week. The makeshift detour I'd carved around the gate had turned into a minefield, ruts deep enough to drown a raccoon, tire tracks cutting through wet spring grass, and my fence line twisted like a drunk had strung it with his eyes closed. I needed to get the tractor through with a water tank fast. The far end of the pasture had dried out worse than a Baptist picnic. I took out 2 more T-posts, widened the gap just enough to ease the tractor through, and figured I could fix the wire after. Bad decision. I know better than to leave a hole in the fence with cattle loose nearby. But that day, I underestimated one particular beast. Brewster. Brewster is a bull. Not just a bull, the bull. Black as midnight, stubborn as a preacher's wife, and about as subtle as a wrecking ball. I raised him from a bottle calf after his mother dropped dead in a freak lightning storm, and ever since then, he's had a special place on the ranch. And a mean streak for things that piss me off. He must have been watching from the shade, because the moment I turned my back and fired up the tractor, I heard a crash, a snort, and then hooves hitting the dirt like a war drum. Brewster barreled straight through the opening in the fence like it owed him money. "Shit, Brewster, no!" I threw the tractor into neutral and jumped out, but by the time my boots hit the ground, he was halfway across the field. And where was he headed? Straight for the gate. Not just the gate, the whole circus setup. Security guard, blinking cameras, and, wouldn't you know it, Karen Malone herself, in a bright pink pantsuit and beige heels, standing there holding a clipboard like she was about to conduct a damn symphony. What the hell she was doing there that early? I still don't know. Maybe she was inspecting her handiwork. Maybe she came to pose for the cameras she'd installed. Either way, she picked the wrong day to play Empress of the Iron Gate. I started running, but there was no catching Brewster once he decided on a target. Karen spotted him too late, just as he let out one of those deep, bone-shaking bellows and charged like a four-legged battering ram. She froze for half a second, then made a sound I can only describe as a rich woman scream, not the kind from horror movies. No, this was more insulted than afraid, like she was personally offended that a bull would dare. Then she ran. Through the manicured HOA flower beds, over a fake cobblestone path, across a lawn so chemically treated it probably glowed in the dark. And Brewster. He followed, snorting and stomping like an avenging spirit. Didn't touch her, he's got more sense than that, but he sure gave her a reason to run. She dove behind a decorative rose trellis, heels kicked off, pantsuit grass-stained, her clipboard nowhere in sight. The security guard, God bless him, tried to help but tripped over a solar-powered garden light and took a face full of mulch. I leaned against the fence post, caught my breath, and sipped my coffee from a thermos I'd left on the fender of the tractor. Watched the whole show like a drive-in movie. When Karen peeked out from behind the rose bush, I raised my mug. "Don't worry, ma'am," I called. "He doesn't like unauthorized gates either." She didn't respond. Too busy trying to crawl across a bed of impatience in what was left of her dignity. Brewster finally got bored and wandered back toward me, flicking his tail like it was just another Tuesday. I walked him back into the pasture, fixed the hole in the fence, and secured it like Fort Knox. Lesson learned. 2 hours later, the video hit the internet. Apparently, someone from the neighborhood caught the whole thing on their phone. Karen sprinting like a track star, Brewster giving chase, the security guard crashing into a hedge. The clip blew up faster than I could reload my email. Bullgate, they called it. The Great HOA Stampede. One guy slowed it down and added dramatic music. Another put Karen's scream on a remix loop. By noon, I'd had 4 reporters call me. One of them offered to send a drone for an aerial interview. I told him he could come down and interview Brewster if he could catch him. Karen didn't find it funny. She sent an email through her lawyer accusing me of reckless endangerment, intentional intimidation, and, my favorite, weaponized livestock deployment. I forwarded it to Calvin, my lawyer, with a single line. I didn't deploy him. He's freelance. But behind the absurdity, I could feel it shifting. Karen had overplayed her hand. She thought I was just a farmer with a gate problem. Now the whole damn county was watching. And so was Brewster. I didn't grow up thinking I'd ever be knee-deep in legal code. My dad taught me to fix fences, rotate pasture, pull a breech calf, and always keep receipts. But nowhere in that man's wisdom was a chapter on battling an HOA president with a pink pantsuit and a god complex. By the end of that week, though, I was spending more time reading county zoning regulations than feeding cattle. Karen wasn't backing down. If anything, she was doubling down. I found out from a friend on the county board that she'd been flooding the municipal offices with letters and complaints. Claimed my ranch was creating environmental stress, that my water tanks were public safety hazards, and in one surreal paragraph that my cows were excessively vocal during evening hours. I couldn't make that up if I tried, but it didn't stop there. One morning, Calvin, my lawyer, called with a tone I didn't like. "You're going to want to sit down for this," he said. "That's never a good opener." He'd been digging deeper into the HOA's paperwork and stumbled on 2 documents that lit him up like a bonfire. The first was a declaration of voluntary easement relinquishment, supposedly signed by my late father, dated 5 years after the man had died. A nice, neat, notarized form giving up rights to the road out front. Except my dad had passed in 2008. The document was dated 2013. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. Did the dead rise just to screw me over? The second document was even worse, a supposed security corridor agreement claiming I'd agreed to let the HOA monitor and control vehicle access through the road to ensure residential safety. My name was printed on it. The signature looked familiar, except I never signed it. 2 forged documents, both used to justify the gate, both filed with the county. Karen's playing dirty, Calvin said, and dumb. She left fingerprints all over this. We didn't wait. Calvin filed an official complaint with the district attorney's office for document fraud and filing false statements with a municipal authority. We also added them to the civil suit already forming like a thunderhead on the horizon. Meanwhile, inside the HOA, Karen's empire started to crack. Turns out not all of her board members were on the same page. One of them, a retired cop named Bill Jensen, gave me a call one evening from a blocked number. Told me he'd seen enough of Karen's games and was willing to share some internal records, off the record. I met him at a diner halfway between town and the ranch. He showed up in an old fishing hat and cargo vest, like he was prepping for a war with trout. "Zach," he said, sliding a flash drive across the table with his coffee. "What she's doing, it ain't just about you. She's been cooking books on security spending for 2 years, faking board votes, blackmailing dissenters with zoning code violations." I blinked. "Why tell me now?" "Because you finally pissed her off enough to make her sloppy." On that drive home, I felt something shift. This wasn't just about gates or bulls or dead-end roads anymore. This was a cancer that had spread behind closed doors while everyone was too polite or too scared to cut it out. We updated the complaint again. With Jensen's help, we attached internal HOA emails, board meeting minutes that were never public, and payment records showing Karen had signed off on emergency camera installations from a company that didn't exist 6 months ago. A shell company, registered in another state, under the name of her nephew. The picture was coming together fast. Karen had used the gate not as protection, but as a pawn in some kind of petty kingdom-building scheme. She had lied to the board, forged my name, used HOA funds to benefit her own family, and now, with the walls closing in, was lashing out like a cornered possum. Calvin filed a joint complaint. 1 civil for damages, harassment, interference with business, and trespass, and 1 criminal, naming Karen personally as the instigator of document forgery, misuse of public infrastructure, and obstruction of agricultural activity, and just in time, too. That weekend, I got a formal summons. Karen had filed her own suit against me, alleging defamation, livestock endangerment, from Brewster, of course, and intentional humiliation via social media spectacle. I read the damn thing twice just to believe it was real. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a whiskey at 10 in the morning, and toasted the absurdity of it all. "Congratulations, Brewster," I said out loud. "You're legally a weapon now." But all jokes aside, things were getting real. The county was investigating. The news had picked up the deeper story. And for the first time, I saw Karen's mask slipping, her polite menace starting to show teeth. She thought this was her show. But I'd just stolen the script. You ever been in a room so full of bullshit it starts to affect your breathing? That was the community hearing room on Tuesday morning. Beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the distinct scent of stale coffee, printed agendas, and nervous bureaucrats. Welcome to municipal hell. I showed up in my best pair of jeans, boots clean enough to walk through a courthouse, but still scuffed enough to remind folks I work for a living. Calvin walked in behind me carrying a box of labeled folders like he was about to prosecute a mob family. The box said, "HOA Shenanigans Vol I." He meant it as a joke. We were already halfway into Volume 2. The place was packed. Karen sat across the room with her lawyer, some out-of-town guy in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my tractor. She had her signature pink blazer on, hair sprayed stiff enough to survive a hurricane, and a smug expression like she was about to accept a key to the city. When they called the hearing to order, the county commissioner leaned into his mic and said, "We're here to discuss a disputed access installation by the Suncrest Meadows HOA affecting a neighboring agricultural property." I stood up. "My name's Zach Brody. I own and operate a 25-acre ranch bordering the Suncrest development. The HOA installed a steel gate on a municipal road that has served my property since the 1960s, without warning, permission, or legal right." I handed out packets, copies of the servitude agreement from 1972, the zoning maps, and photos of the gate. Then I dropped the hammer, side-by-side comparisons of my actual signature and the forged one submitted with the HOA's permit application. "According to this document," I said, holding up the fake agreement, "my father signed away our road rights in 2013. Problem is, he died in 2008. The room went dead quiet. Karen's lawyer stood up like someone lit a fire under his chair. "These documents were submitted by the HOA in good faith." Calvin interrupted. "Your client submitted a notarized affidavit signed by a dead man and an access agreement that Mr. Brody never saw, let alone signed. That's not faith. That's fraud." Karen didn't say a word. Her smile cracked a little, though. Then came the footage. Calvin wheeled in a TV and played the security video from my trail cam. The HOA guard turning away Leroy at the gate. The guard saying, "This road is no longer available for farm traffic." Clear as day. Add to that the USDA report from Agent Weller detailing how my livestock nearly died due to blocked access, and the medical records for the calf I nearly lost. Then Calvin played the recording from Bill Jensen, the retired cop, HOA board member, and surprise witness. Jensen laid it all out: the rigged board votes, the fabricated minutes, the kickback payments for camera installs run through Karen's nephew. By the time it was over, Karen's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. When Karen finally did speak, it was like watching someone try to put out a house fire with perfume. "This is being sensationalized. Mr. Brody has been hostile and reckless. He weaponized a bull." There were chuckles from the gallery. One woman actually whispered, "The bull was the hero." Karen went red in the face. "We acted in the interest of resident safety." The commissioner raised a hand. "Ma'am, your security expansion was filed without legal access, based on forged documentation, and implemented on public infrastructure. You don't get to play sheriff on county land." Karen sat down, tight-lipped. She looked less like a queen and more like a kid caught stealing cookies. The board recessed for 20 minutes. I stepped outside, took a breath of fresh air, and stood in the parking lot under the shade of a mesquite tree. Brewster's face was trending again on social media. Someone added a sheriff's hat to the picture and dubbed it "Justice is Mooing." When we were called back in, the commissioner didn't waste time. The Suncrest Meadows HOA is hereby ordered to remove the access gate within 72 hours. All access must be restored. Additionally, the matter of fraudulent documents will be referred to the district attorney for further investigation. Karen looked like someone had slapped her with a cactus. As we filed out, she brushed past me near the doors, her voice low, venomous. "You think this is over? You have no idea who you're dealing with." I met her eyes, calm as can be. "If I have to, I'll bring the whole damn herd into the next hearing." "Brewster likes a good crowd," she glared. I smiled. Let her threaten. Let her scramble. The county was awake now. The evidence was on the table, and for once it wasn't me under the microscope. It was her. If you'd told me a year ago I'd be sitting in a courtroom watching a woman get prosecuted for trying to gate off a ranch road, I'd have laughed, shook your hand, and said, "Only in California." But there I was, on a Monday morning, inside a crisp beige courtroom that smelled like floor polish and stale tension, watching Karen Malone adjust her pearl necklace like it could protect her from federal charges. The place was packed. Press benches full. Neighbors from Suncrest Meadows filed in like they were showing up to a live episode of reality TV. Half of them brought Starbucks cups. One of them wore a t-shirt with a cartoon bull that said, "Brewster for President." Karen sat at the defendant's table with the same high-end attorney who'd tried to bluff his way through the municipal hearing. But this wasn't a boardroom or HOA meet and greet anymore. This was criminal court, and the DA was not here to play nice. The charges read out like the plot of a B-grade crime thriller: forgery of public records, filing false documents, obstruction of agricultural operations, and misappropriation of HOA funds. 4 felonies and 1 misdemeanor for good measure. I took the stand on the second day of trial, swore in, sat straight, and looked the jury in the eye as I answered each question. Calvin had prepped me, but I didn't need much help. The truth has a way of speaking for itself when you've lived it. "I didn't sign those documents," I told the court. "My father didn't sign them either. He died in 2008. That fake paperwork was used to shut me off from the only legal road to my property. And when I complained, I was ignored, threatened, and accused of being the problem." The DA showed the jury side-by-side signatures. Then they brought up the USDA report, the video footage of the blocked access, and medical records from the injured calf. The vet even testified, calm, direct, no drama, just laid out how preventable the damage had been. Karen's defense tried to paint it all as a misunderstanding, an internal HOA oversight, an overzealous response to increased crime risk. Then came the big one. Bill Jensen, former cop, current HOA board member, and unexpected whistleblower, took the stand. He testified to the forged meeting minutes, the intimidation tactics Karen used to silence dissenting votes, and the shell company she used to funnel HOA funds through her nephew. The room got real quiet. Then came the part that sealed it. A recording. Bill had wired himself up weeks ago when Karen called him in for a private discussion after the municipal hearing. On tape, her voice came through the courtroom speakers, crystal clear. "If you stay quiet, we can clean this up. But if you keep stirring things, I'll make sure the county looks into your past too. You think that drunk and disorderly charge from '99 won't resurface?" The jury didn't flinch. But I saw Karen's lawyer rub his temples like a man realizing his client was the Titanic and he'd been handed a straw to bail water. The prosecutor turned to the judge. The people rest. Karen's attorney tried one last Hail Mary. Called her to the stand. Bad move. She sat there, back straight, lips pursed like she was holding back a sneeze, tried to spin it all as a smear campaign. Claimed she only did what was necessary for the safety of Suncrest Meadows. Said the fake signatures must have come from a miscommunication. When cross-examination hit, the DA asked her directly, "Did you submit paperwork to the county that included forged signatures?" She hesitated. I delegated document handling to an assistant." "Was that assistant your nephew?" Silence. "Did that assistant also own the security company that billed the HOA $42,000 for 3 cameras and a metal gate?" Her lips moved. Nothing came out. The DA let the silence do its job. By the end of the week, closing arguments were delivered. Calvin and I sat in the back row, quiet, watching it unfold. No theatrics, no tears, just the law laying bricks one at a time until the whole damn structure came down. The jury came back after just 4 hours of deliberation. Guilty. On all counts. Karen didn't cry, didn't flinch. She sat there like someone who still thought this was all going to blow over, like someone waiting for the HOA to bail her out. The judge wasn't having it. He called her behavior an abuse of civic systems and power and sentenced her to 5 years in state prison, plus restitution, $45,000 in fines, and $18,000 in damages to my ranch. There was no applause. Just the shuffle of papers, the buzz of a bailiff's radio, and Karen being led away in handcuffs, her heels echoing off the courtroom floor like punctuation marks. Outside, the sun was shining. Brewster was on a t-shirt, and for the first time in months, the gate was gone. No steel, no keypad, no guard, just open road. The morning after the sentencing, I stood at the end of my driveway, coffee in hand, watching the sun crawl up over the hills like it had nowhere better to be. No blinking red lights, no steel gates, just the crunch of gravel under my boots, and the quiet kind of peace that only comes when the bastards finally lose. They hauled the last of the gate hardware off the day before, under court order. Even the post came up, leaving behind square patches of torn soil and embarrassment. The security cameras, gone. The guard shack, torn down. In its place, nothing but a clear road, open sky, and the low hum of life returning to normal. I took a slow walk to the end of the property just to feel it again. The full line of sight down that public road, unblocked, unbothered. It was mine just like it had always been. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I stood my ground. The county had been quick to make things right once the verdict dropped. Officials came out, apologized in the most government way possible, handshakes, citations, and a laminated letter promising increased diligence going forward. I didn't need their words. I just needed their silence. Karen was gone, stripped of her title, nameplate, and any illusion of power. The HOA held an emergency vote and ousted her with more enthusiasm than I expected. One guy even sent me a fruit basket. I gave it to the vet clinic staff, figured they earned it more than I did. The restitution payments had started coming in too. First chunk covered the vet bills. Second went toward rebuilding the fence along the pasture. I hired Leroy and his nephew to do it. Paid them double. Figured they deserved something good after all the crap they'd waded through with me. And Brewster, he got himself a brand new steel water trough and a custom sticker on his head collar that said HOA Gate Inspector. He struts around like a retired sheriff, nodding at the fence line like he's daring someone to try it again. Before long, folks started driving down the road again like they used to. The feed trucks, the mail van, the neighbor with the beat-up Ford who always brings pie when her goats get loose. It felt whole again, like the land exhaled. I didn't want interviews, said no to a podcast, turned down an invite from a state rep who wanted to turn me into some poster boy for rural rights. I told him, I'm not here to be a symbol. I'm here to raise cattle and pay taxes slower than I should, but I did hang one thing, right by the end of the drive, bolted to a fresh cedar post with iron brackets. A sign, clean, white paint, black lettering. Block this road again. Brewster will open it himself. Sometimes I catch folks slowing down to read it. Some laugh, some nod, and some just keep driving, a little faster than before. That's fine by me. I'm not here to scare 'em. Just remind 'em who this land belongs to and what happens when you forget.